Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight we're venturing deep into the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, where misty peaks hide secrets older than time, and some of them still whisper in the wind. From ghostly apparitions wandering forgotten trails, to ancient curses buried beneath the soil, get ready for 5 of the most disturbing true Appalachian horror stories that will make you question what's real and what's lurking just beyond the trees. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing, and by doing so, they miss out on the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because tonight's just the beginning, and the terror waiting in the darkness is far from over. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because here, the night is only getting started, and the horror is waiting to unfold. Now let's dive into the darkness. They call it the witch tree, a gnarled, scorched sycamore standing like a crooked finger on the edge of the long-abandoned McDowell Farm in Floyd County, Virginia. It's not marked on any map. GPS won't help you. Locals say even birds won't perch on its branches, and animals won't graze within 100 feet of it. No crickets, no frogs, not even flies. Just silence. A deep, watching silence. The kind that settles in your bones and tells you to turn around, no matter how brave you thought you were. The stories go back over 2 centuries, and in Floyd County, they still talk about the Clagg woman. Martha Clagg, born 1742, died, or so they say, in 1783. She was strange even for that time. Widowed twice before the age of 30, lived alone in a log cabin near what used to be a hunting trail. No children, no friends, just jars filled with cloudy liquid and strange things floating inside. Frogs with extra eyes, dried tongues of animals, pale clumps of hair that weren't hers. They say she delivered babies when no one else would, stitched wounds, cured fevers, and sometimes the babies didn't live, and sometimes they weren't quite right. Then, in the summer of 1783, the cattle started dying. First, just 1 or 2, then whole herds, bloated, stiff, eyes clouded over with milky cataracts. The local preacher said it was God's punishment. The farmers said it was Martha. One morning, a baby was gone from his cradle. His mother swore she laid him down with a lullaby and found nothing but a handful of ashes in the shape of a sleeping child. That was the final straw. The town gathered torches and ropes. No one questioned it. No one hesitated. They dragged Martha from her home, barefoot and silent. They chained her to the sycamore tree at the edge of town, the one standing alone in a wide, empty field. She didn't cry, didn't beg. She just stared at them, each of them, one by one, like she knew their secrets. When they lit the fire beneath her, they expected screams. What they got was a smile. That smile broke something in the crowd. Halfway through the burning, the air turned foul. The flames changed color, blue, then green, then a deep, unnatural red. People swore they heard whispers rising with the smoke. Not Martha's voice, something older, something hungry. By the time it was over, there was nothing left but blackened earth and a scorch mark up the sycamore's trunk. The chains had melted into the bark. No one buried her. The tree became her grave. Years passed. The town tried to forget, but the tree didn't. In 1924, the McDowell family moved into the area, bought up the land dirt cheap. Old man McDowell was a hard man, ex-military, no patience for ghost stories or local superstition. His son Henry, 17 and full of spitfire, took an axe to the sycamore one evening just for the hell of it. 3 hard swings, and the blade stuck deep. He left it there. That night, Henry didn't come home. They searched the woods for 2 days. On the 3rd, they found him, hanging from one of the tree's limbs, 30 feet in the air, no ladder in sight. His eyes were wide open, blood vessels burst, mouth full of soil. But that wasn't the worst of it. The bark had grown around the rope, and worse, through his skin. Not wrapped around him, through him. The fibers of the tree had pierced his back, threaded into his shoulders, out through his cheeks. His body was being absorbed. They buried him, closed casket. Old Man McDowell fenced off the field after that, called it cursed, left the axe in the tree. It's still there today, rusted, swallowed almost to the hilt by the bark. He sold the farm and left. Town a year later, never looked back. Time moved on, but the stories didn't. Over the years, people who wandered too close said they heard their name whispered from the tree, always softly, always from the direction of the bark, even when the wind was dead still. Some said the tree was warm to the touch. Some said it pulsed, like it had a heartbeat. In 1979, a man named Carl Dandridge, a drunk and local nobody, tried to light the tree on fire one night after stumbling back from the tavern. Said he wanted to burn the bitch down for good. He was found the next morning lying next to it, eyes wide open, mouth agape, but not breathing. His chest was collapsed, not like a heart attack, like something crushed him from the inside. The only mark on his body was a single black handprint burned into the middle of his chest. It was upside down. Then came 2016. A YouTube ghost hunting channel called Paranormal Squad came to Floyd County. 4 20-somethings, flashlights, gear, a drone. They thought it was all fake. Did a live stream that night. Joked, laughed, dared each other to touch the bark. The girl, Kayla, touched it first. She said it was hot. Too hot. Then she started shaking, not like a seizure, like something was crawling under her skin. She started screaming. The feed cut out. When authorities found the footage later, there were 27 seconds of audio before the camera died completely. A whisper, a rustling, sound like leaves on bone. Then, very clearly, she never left. They found 3 of the kids. One was missing his tongue. One was found in the creek a mile away, curled up in a fetal position, mumbling, "It sees you," over and over. The 3rd was just gone. Never found. And Kayla? Her body was discovered 3 days later, wrapped around the base of the tree. That's not a figure of speech. Her spine had been twisted like a vine. Her arms were threaded through the branches. Her skin was cracked like bark, like she was becoming part of it. No one goes near the tree now. The field is overgrown, the land unsold. Even developers won't touch it. It's like the ground knows, like the soil remembers what it buried. They say the tree still whispers names, always at dusk, sometimes at dawn. Doesn't matter how far you are from it. If it knows your name, you'll hear it. And if you answer, if you step 1 foot inside that field, it's already too late. Some say it's not Martha anymore, that something else has taken root there, something older than the town, older than the tree, something that came when the fire opened a door and her death fed whatever was waiting on the other side. And that tree, it's not growing, it's feeding. They don't put it on any maps, not anymore. Deep in the woods of Carter County, Kentucky, there's a stretch of wilderness the locals call the Holler That Whispers. It's all sandstone cliffs, choking undergrowth, and trails so faded they might as well be scars on the land. Hikers come through sometimes, campers too, chasing the beauty of the place. Most turn back before they get too far. A few don't. At the edge of that forest, past the rusted sign for the old saltpeter mine, there's a cave. Doesn't look like much at first. Just a dark wound in the rock face, half covered by vines and dead leaves. No real path to it. You have to know where it is. Or maybe it has to know you. The locals call it the Crying Cave. Not because it's haunted, not exactly. They call it that because it weeps. Every full moon. Every damn one. People say you can hear it. A woman crying, sobbing like her whole world just died. Not a ghostly wail or some faint wind trick. This ain't your average campfire tale, man. Her voice is sharp, clear, real. Too real, she begs. For help, for water, for someone to find her babies, and that's where the legend begins. They say it goes back to the Civil War, sometime around 1864, when the Union Army was pushing hard through eastern Kentucky. Guerrilla fighters, deserters, and terrified families scattered into the hills like kicked ant hills. One such family, name lost to time, found shelter in the cave. A man, a woman, and their 3 children. They hid for weeks, maybe months, living off canned beans, boiled moss, and whatever small game the father could catch with traps. But someone must have talked, or maybe it was dumb luck. Either way, a Union scouting party found them. The soldiers dragged the man and woman out of the cave, accused them of harboring rebel supplies, and shot them dead in the clearing out front. As for the children, they sealed them inside, blocked the mouth of the cave with boulders and packed earth, left them in the dark. 2 of them died fast, probably the youngest ones, but not the girl. She was 10, maybe 11. They say she lasted weeks, maybe longer, ate the moss, drank condensation off the cave walls. Then, when the hunger got too loud, she turned to her brother and sister, and when they found her, God help whoever found her, they say she was still alive, just barely, clawing at the edge of the rockfall, skin gray, lips cracked, eyes black from the dark. She didn't speak, she didn't cry, she just made a sound like a kitten being stepped on. They took her to a church in Olive Hill. She lived another 3 weeks, then bit off her own tongue and bled out in a fever dream. Her last words were scratched into the underside of the pew she died under. "Don't let the dark take you." That should have been the end of it, but the cave never stopped crying. Over the years, hikers reported hearing a woman's voice echoing through the trees, sometimes begging, sometimes just humming a lullaby, like she's still trying to rock her siblings to sleep. Search and rescue teams have gone in, brave men and women with ropes, helmets, and radios. Some come out shaken, pale like they left, their blood behind. Others don't talk anymore, just sit on their porches and stare into the woods. One man shot himself a week later, left a note that said, "She's still hungry," and a few never came out at all. One of them was a woman named Marla Jensen, a geologist from the University of Kentucky. Went into the cave with a research team in 2009 to study rock erosion. They found her helmet and camera 2 days later. The footage was mostly static, but in the last 10 seconds, she turns the camera on herself, wide-eyed, whispering something. She's right behind me. They never found her body. Park rangers still patrol the area, though they've stopped filing reports. You ask them, they'll shrug it off. Just the wind in the rocks, they say. Temperature shifting the earth. But their eyes tell a different story, like they've seen things they'd rather forget. Every so often, a hiker will come back to their tent with long scratches down their back, deep ones, ragged, like fingernails or claws. Sometimes they wake up with their hands full of dirt, or dirt in their mouth, like they were trying to burrow their way out of something in their sleep. One boy, no older than 16, was found curled, up in a hollow tree near the trailhead, rocking back and forth and whispering the same phrase over and over. The crying stops when you answer her, and that's the trick of it, because it's not just noise, it's a trap. Something in that cave wants you to hear it, needs you to believe it. Once you do, it gets inside you, pulls you toward the dark, inch by inch. Not with claws or chains, but with sorrow, with loneliness, with that low, endless sobbing that sounds like someone you love begging you not to leave. And if you go in, she'll be waiting. Not the girl. Not anymore. Whatever came out of that cave when she died, it's not human. It remembers her pain, her hunger, her fear. It wears her voice like a mask, and it wants company. So if you ever find yourself in Carter, county on a full moon night and the wind turns sharp and cold, and you hear a woman crying in the woods, don't follow it, don't answer. And whatever you do, don't listen too long, because once you do, the dark won't let you go. It starts with the birds. Ask anyone from the outskirts of Black Mountain, and they'll tell you the same thing. When the birds drop, something's wrong in the hills. Doesn't matter if it's a hawk, a crow, or a sparrow. When they fall hard like stones, necks snapped clean, sometimes in flocks, sometimes alone, always dead before they hit the ground. They say it's the man, the one who walks upside down. They don't mean metaphorically, they mean it plain, as in feet to the sky, head dangling toward the earth, coat flapping in a wind no one else feels. He walks beneath the world like gravity don't apply to him, like he's tethered to some dark thread no one can see. He's always near the cliffs, high up where the fog clings like a second skin, and the wind never stops whining. If you're lucky, you only catch a glimpse, just a flash of that long oilskin miner's coat swinging above the ridge. If you're not, you hear him before you see him, the sound of a jawbone clicking out of rhythm, like a busted metronome, a soft tap, tap, tap in the air above your head. And then, the silence that follows, thick and oily. The story goes back to 1902, when the old Pine Gap mine collapsed. 38 men buried alive in a cloud of coal dust and splintered rock. Bodies crushed, lungs filled with soot. It was the kind of death no prayer could soften. The company tried to spin it, said it was a gas pocket, a tragic accident. But the miners, those who weren't down there that day, they whispered different. They said the mountain was angry, and Silas Kuhn was the only one who listened. Silas was an odd bird, even by mountain standards. Tall, skeletal, with deep-set eyes and a permanent coal smudge across his cheek like some demon's fingerprint. He wasn't just a miner, he was a spiritualist. Talked to the dead, read signs in rock patterns and coal dust. Said he could hear the mountain groaning in its sleep. And in the weeks before the collapse, he stopped coming to church, started painting symbols on the walls of his shack up by the ridge. Lines and spirals that didn't make sense to anyone but him. Told folks the mine was cursed, that the mountain was alive, and it was hungry. No one listened. Not until the earth cracked open and swallowed nearly 40 souls. They found what was left of him, half crushed under a timber beam, body twisted, but face strangely untouched. He was smiling. They buried him separate from the others, in a shallow grave up on the ridge. Not out of respect, but out of fear. A week later, that grave was empty. At first, folks figured it was grave robbers or animals. Then came the tapping. People started hearing it inside their homes. Not on the floor, not in the ceiling, in the walls. Tap, 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 slow, measured, like a pickaxe. Always late at night, sometimes followed by the sound of boots dragging across a ceiling that wasn't there. Then hikers started going missing, one by one, like teeth knocked from an old skull. No struggle, no blood. Just gone. And always, always, their boots were found later, hanging from trees by the laces, always upside down, as if whatever took them wanted the world to remember how it walks. Old-timers say Silas isn't dead. Not exactly. They say the mountain took him in, made him part of itself, fused, his bones with stone, his breath with mist. They say he walks the fault lines now, pacing between the cracks in the world, looking for company, and when he finds someone alone in the woods, he hangs them from the trees. Not out of hate, just to make them closer to him. There's a boy in town, Micah Blackwell, 23, college dropout. Went looking for the Crying Cave 3 winters ago and wound up camping near the cliffs instead. Came back a week later, barefoot, clothes torn, eyes dull like old coins. Doesn't talk anymore, just draws. Sketchbooks full of jagged charcoal images. The same one, over and over, a man in a miner's coat. Face pale, jaw slack and dangling. Feet planted against nothing, hanging upside down in the mist. Watching. Watching. There's a saying around these parts, don't look up on a foggy morning. Not just superstition. Folks mean it. Because if you do, and you see him walking above the cliff line, coat fluttering, like smoke, eyes hollow and grinning. It's already too late. You'll hear the pickaxe next, in your attic, then the walls, then your dreams. And one morning, someone will find your boots, dangling from a tree limb, laces tied tight, upside down. Hungry Mother State Park is the kind of place that smiles too wide. It has the name of something gentle, something out of a children's book. Trails twist through lush green forests, birds chirp sweetly in the morning, and the lake stretches calm and glassy as a mirror too clean. It's beautiful, peaceful, a postcard tucked into the crook of Southwest Virginia. But the locals don't camp there, not overnight, not anymore. They'll smile polite when you ask them about it, say it's fine, say the name comes from some old legend and wave it off. But their eyes go quiet. They shift their feet, and if you look close, you'll notice they never go near the lake after dark, because that's when the bell starts ringing, soft at first, just a ting on the wind, like an old dinner bell swaying on a porch that doesn't exist anymore. It always comes from the water, always. Sometimes it's near the dock. Sometimes it's deeper out, bobbing just past where the lake fog curls like pale fingers. It doesn't matter where it starts. It always gets closer. And if you hear it and you follow it, they say you don't come back. Or worse, you do. The story goes back to the 1800s, when a settler family, named Lost to Time, was attacked by raiders. No one knows if it was outlaws or soldiers gone mad from hunger and cold. All that survived was the daughter, little girl, no more than 8. She and her mother ran into the forest, bleeding and barefoot, and disappeared into the holler. Weeks passed. A search party found her in the spring thickets, curled up beside a creek that would one day fill the lake. Her skin hung loose, ribs sharp and rising like the keels of sunken ships. Her eyes were wide, dried out from crying, and all she said over and over was, "Hungry mother, hungry mother." The searchers followed her trail, found a small cave. Inside, bones, picked clean. The woman's remains were laid out like a feast half finished. Bits of fabric and brittle hair clung to the edges, and scratch marks, hundreds of them, lined the stone walls. The daughter was sent to a convent, died in silence, never spoke again. But the bell started not long after. Campers began reporting it in the 1930s. A soft clanging out by the lake. The rangers blamed it on wind chimes, on boat chains, on fisher's gear. But people who went to investigate, especially alone, sometimes didn't come back. A woman in 1951, a hiker in 1974, a pair of twin brothers in 1992. They vanished like breath in fog, no bodies, no footprints, no sounds, just a bell. The most famous case was Jared Wilkins, a 10-year-old boy who wandered off from his family campsite in July of 2006. He followed the bell, said it sounded like his mother calling him to dinner. His parents found his footprints leading to the edge of the water, and then nothing. 3 days later, he came back. He wasn't right. His hair had turned completely white. His skin was cold, and he wouldn't stop whispering. His fingers, everyone, were gnawed down to the bone, like he'd been chewing on them in the dark to stay sane, or something had been chewing on them for him. All he said, over and over, was, "She feeds on the ones who follow the bell." They tried to get him to say more, but his voice gave out. He hasn't spoken since. Still alive. Still in a care home. Still stares out the window whenever it rains. The park didn't close. They covered it up like they always do. Said he got lost, hypothermic, bit his hands trying to survive. People bought it because they needed to. Because the truth was worse. Locals know better. They say it's the mother, not the girl, not the raiders. The mother, starved, forgotten, left to die in a cave while her daughter lived on. That kind of hunger doesn't fade. It turns you hollow. It makes you echo. And now she rings the bell. Some say she's trying to call her child back. Others say she's still hungry. and the bell is her dinner call. You hear it, you come to her, and she feeds. They say if you're near the lake on a still night and the fog rises without wind and you hear the bell, you have to do one thing: don't look at the water, not even once, because if you do, you'll see her. She doesn't scream, doesn't rush at you, just stands waist-deep in the black water, hair matted to her face, head tilted like she's listening to something behind your heartbeat. Her mouth doesn't move, but you'll hear it in, "Your bones, come home, baby, supper's ready." Elkmont wasn't always just a ghost town swallowed by forest and forgotten by time. Back in the Roaring Twenties, it was a place where families came to breathe, to escape the grinding dust of the cities, the factories, the endless noise. Tucked into the heart of the Great Smoky Mountains, Elkmont was a jewel, a resort town cradled between towering pines and rugged cliffs, built on hope and summer dreams. People flocked there, renting cabins with wraparound porches, roasting marshmallows over crackling fires, and dancing under string lights that glittered like stars caught in branches. The air was thick with laughter, and the night sang with jazz, fiddle, and the clinking of glasses. But the mountain has a long memory. It remembers everything. When the National Park Service bought the land in the late 1930s, the families were given eviction notices, some only a few days' warning. The cabins were left abandoned, doors left open, like mouths gasping in surprise. Years passed, and the forest didn't hesitate. Vines clawed through shattered windows, roots split floorboards, and the old wooden structures began to rot and lean under the weight of years. The people left Elkmont behind, but some say Elkmont never left them. Decades later, rangers stationed in the park began reporting strange happenings. It started with faint lights flickering in the windows of empty cabins, soft glimmers like candle flames trembling in a breeze that didn't exist. Then the sounds began. Music, distant but clear, drifting across the hills in the deep dark of night. Sometimes it was a piano playing a ragtime tune. Sometimes it was laughter, the high-pitched giggle of children, or the low hum of a fiddle. It was as if the town itself was still alive, still celebrating, still clinging desperately to the last, remnants of a forgotten past. Ranger. Tom Willis was the kind of man who didn't believe in ghost stories. He was practical, tough as old leather, with a habit of lighting his cigarettes with a flint lighter that sparked louder than a storm. When his fellow rangers whispered about the haunted Spence cabin, he laughed it off. "Just some kids messing with old wiring or some damn raccoon," he said. One cold October night, Tom grabbed his flashlight and headed to Spence cabin alone, determined to prove the stories were nonsense. The air was thick with mist, curling around the trees like fingers reaching out to drag him back. The path to the cabin was overgrown, barely a trail anymore, but Tom moved with the ease of a man used to the woods. When he reached the cabin, the door hung open just a crack, creaking softly in the breeze. He stepped inside. The air smelled of damp wood, old smoke, and something else. Something sweet and sour, like burnt sugar mixed with decay. His flashlight beam cut through the dark, landing on peeling wallpaper, a shattered mirror, and furniture draped in dusty sheets. Then he heard it, a faint melody, slow and haunting, like a piano playing far off in the distance. It grew louder, weaving through the silence, filling the room with a sound that was both beautiful and unbearably sad. Tom's heart thudded, but he forced himself forward. The cabin felt alive in a way no building should, warm and pulsing, like it was breathing beneath his feet. Then, the strangest thing happened. His flashlight slipped from his fingers, spinning up and landing. On the ceiling, Tom's hat followed, balanced perfectly next to it. The floor beneath him was cold, but the walls radiated a strange warmth, almost like the cabin itself was watching him. He tried to move, to reach for the light, but his body felt heavy, like the air was thick with unseen chains. Outside, the music played on. Days later, a search party found his flashlight and hat exactly where he left them, balanced on the ceiling. But Tom was gone. No sign of him anywhere. The only trace was a faint echo of the piano carried on the wind. Rangers who stayed near Spence's cabin sometimes swear they see a figure standing in the window, a man in a miner's coat, hat pulled low, face pale and expressionless. Others hear footsteps circling the cabin, footsteps that stop when you stop, as if someone, or something, is watching you. The local Cherokee know a different story. They say Elkmont sits on a thin place, where the veil between the living and the dead is so fragile that time folds over itself. The lights aren't ghosts, but echoes, pieces of the past trapped in a loop, desperately trying to live their lives again. And if you're not careful, the past will reach out and drag you in too. People who disappear around Elkmont don't vanish into thin air. Sometimes all that's left is a pair of shoes on the porch or a flashlight hanging from a tree branch, swaying gently in a breeze that doesn't blow. The mountain remembers, and the party never ends. There's a patch of forest out near Pine Creek in West Virginia where the wind doesn't blow quite right. Old-timers say it's cursed land, the kind of place that drinks memories and spits out shadows. They say the trees grow a little too close together, and the light never quite touches the ground, even at high noon. Birds avoid it. Dogs whimper when you get near it. Locals steer clear like their bones remember something their minds forgot. But the ones who do go out there, hikers, campers, amateur ghost hunters with cheap flashlights and big egos, they all say the same thing eventually. They heard it, the whistle. Not a bird, not the wind, a slow, tuneless whistle, off-key, sad even, like a man trying to remember a song from childhood that never quite existed. The problem is, it always comes from behind you. Even if you stop, even if you turn around, it's always behind you. And the more you try to outrun it, the closer it seems to get. The legend of the Whistlers goes back over a century to 1911, when the Whistler brothers, Jeb, Silas, and Tom, went out into the woods to hunt and never came back. Their name, ironically, wasn't tied to the phenomenon at first. It was just a coincidence. They were mountain men, strong, capable, local heroes of a sort, knew the land like the lines in their palms. Search parties scoured the woods for weeks. They found the brothers' rifles near a dry creek bed, lined up neatly like someone had, arranged them for display. The strangest part? There wasn't a drop of blood, not a scuff in the dirt, just the rifles, and an eerie whistle that kept turning the heads of the searchers. Some of the men said it was just the wind through the trees. Others said it followed them back to their homes. One man, Edgar Bell, swore the whistle echoed through his house at night, even when the windows were shut and the fire was strong in the hearth. His daughter found him hanging in the barn 2 weeks later, head tilted to the side like he was still listening. No one spoke about it after that, not openly. But the whispers spread. The Whistlers, they called them. Spirits, echoes, something worse. Over the decades, the story took root. Campers reported hearing something walking around their tents at night, soft boot steps in a slow circle. One man woke up to find long, human-like teeth marks in the leather of his hiking boots. Another, a woman from Morgantown, reported that her canteen had been gnawed nearly in half, and when she held it up to the ranger, the metal looked peeled away like tinfoil. Only there were no animals nearby big enough to do it. But the worst stories were the ones that came from those who whistled back. Nobody knows why someone would even try it. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's bravado. Maybe it's the same compulsion that makes you want to stare down from the edge of a cliff just to see how far you could fall. But when someone whistles back, the woods respond. Not loudly, not dramatically, but subtly. The air grows colder, the shadows shift, and the whistle returns. Changed. Now it carries something with it. A whisper, a name. Your name. It slithers through the trees, curling around your ears, soft and personal. Sometimes it's sung like a lullaby. Sometimes it's just spoken plainly, like an invitation. That's when people start vanishing. There's a ranger, retired now, name's Marlene Faulkner, who tells a story about a teenager who whistled into the woods on a dare. Kid's name was Peter Barnes. Smart, polite, loved science fiction and trail mix. They never found his body, but they did find his boots, tied together and hanging from a tree branch 15 feet off the ground. Upside down and etched into the bark, so deep the letters still weep, sap, were the words, "He whistled back." Marlene quit 6 months later. She won't go near the place now, keeps a shotgun by her door and sleeps with music playing loud, enough to drown out anything the wind might carry. You see, that's the thing about the whistlers. They don't come charging out of the woods with bloody claws or glowing eyes. No. They're patient, they wait, they follow, and they listen. Every so often someone new comes to Pine Creek looking for a thrill. They hike the trail, sleep under the stars, and laugh off the stories. And always, they hear the whistle. Some run, some freeze, some call out. But if they whistle back, it's only a matter of time before the woods open up and the trees bend just enough to let them in. No screams, no struggle, just silence, and the whistle still behind you, always behind you, waiting. Coal's a funny thing. It fuels towns, burns hot and steady, puts meat on the table and scars on the lungs. But in places like Harlan County, Kentucky, coal's more than fuel. It's history, it's heritage, it's haunt. Folks down there talk about it like it's alive. And maybe, in that one shaft outside Benham, it was. The mine was called Number 6, though most miners back then called it the Coffin. A joke. One of those gallows humor names men give dangerous places so they don't seem so goddamn dangerous. Back in '32, just after a hard winter, the mine had a crew of 18, and they worked double shifts 'cause the company men promised bonuses if they hit their quotas. It was a Thursday morning when the first sign came. The canaries, every single one of them, in cages lined up along the walls, were dead. Not fluttering, not gasping, just dead. Mouths open, eyes rolled back, their little bodies stiff like they'd been flash frozen in place. Ed Rowe, the foreman, didn't like it, one bit. He was a big man with a busted nose and fingers like tree stumps, 30 years underground and still breathing. He'd seen his share of methane leaks, collapses, even one poor bastard who got cooked alive in a pocket of steam. But this was different. They didn't suffocate, Ed told the company doctor. They looked like they were drained. That same morning, black water started seeping from the walls. Not coal slurry, not mud. This stuff was thick, like oil, and smelled like burnt meat left out in the sun. Worse, it bled, slow and steady, straight from the rock like the mine itself had been cut open. Ed made the call to shut it down, sent the rest of the crew topside and stayed behind to do one last sweep. That's when he saw it. Later, people, said Ed, came up shaking, stuttering, wide-eyed like a man who'd seen the gates of hell cracked open. All he could say was, "There's something moving behind the rock, too big to fit in the tunnels." But still there. That night, 6 men, Ed included, volunteered to go back in. Stubborn pride or company pressure, no one knows. For sure, they had carbide lamps and shotguns, ropes and flares. One of them, a kid named Cletus, even carried a Bible. They went down at dusk. They never came back up. No screams, no cave-in, just silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. When they sent another team after 3 hours, all they found were the carbide lamps, broken, and long, ragged gouges in the support beams, like something had clawed its way through. The mine was sealed the next morning. Company men came with trucks and concrete and poured it shut. The papers printed nothing, just a footnote in a monthly report. Shaft 6 closed for safety concerns. Casualties, 6. Cause, unknown. And that should have been the end of it. But in Harlan County, some things don't stay buried. They call it the breather now. Ask anyone who's lived near Benham long enough, and they'll tell you. Don't go near the old shaft at night. The earth around it moves, expands, contracts, like lungs. And if you listen close, real close, you'll hear it. A low, ragged moaning like something down there is dreaming in pain. Or maybe waking up. Some nights it sounds like chewing. Park ranger, back in '57, vanished while hiking the ridge. His partner found his hat and flashlight near the sealed shaft. That flashlight was bent in half like it had been caught in a vise. In '71, a drifter named Mason Lowe pitched a tent near the mine. Locals told him to move along, but he laughed and said he didn't believe in ghost stories. Next morning, the tent was still there, zipped up. Inside was his sleeping bag, his boots, and his clothes. All of it. Mason was gone. Not a drop of blood, not a single footprint leading away. Just a trail of black water oozing downhill. There's a church nearby, an old one, clapboard siding and a crooked bell. The pastor keeps a light burning in the steeple all night, says it's not for sinners or saints. It's for the men who ain't at rest, he says, the ones still down there. Sometimes, late in October, when the fog hangs low and the wind carries coal dust, people see lights flickering from the collapsed shaft, blue-white and cold, like flame without heat. Other times, they hear voices, not screaming, not calling for help, just whispers, long and low and crawling up from under the ground. Ed Rowe's name comes up a lot. So does Cletus. The voices sound like they're still walking the tunnels, still working shifts in the dark. Now and then, someone asks why the company never reopened the mine. The coal vein was rich enough to run half the state. Truth is, they tried. Back in 1949, a new team came to drill around the old shaft. They lasted 3 days. On the 4th, the drills went silent, and a geyser of black water burst 30 feet into the air. Every bird within a mile fell dead that night. They sealed it tighter. Now it just sits there, quiet, but not dead. A wound in the land, a hole too deep to measure, too dark to see the bottom. Some say the thing in there is waiting, some say it's growing, and some say it's not a thing at all, but something older than coal, older than bones, something that feeds on men who go where they shouldn't, something that remembers names. So if you ever find yourself in Harlan County, Kentucky, don't follow the black water. Don't go near the breathing dirt. And whatever you do, don't answer if it calls your name. The locals still don't say much about Possum Hollow, not even after all these years. They'll give you a nod, maybe a shrug, and then change the subject. People who grew up near there, their voices drop a little when they say the name. No one calls it the Hollow or Old Possum like some nickname can soften it. They say the whole thing, dead serious, Possum Hollow, like they're trying to warn you without saying too much. Like saying it plain is the only way to keep something worse from listening. In the winter of 1965, something happened in that hollow that tore through the town of Pulaski like a blade through wet paper. That's the year the Keller family died. Elmer, Jolene, and their 3 kids, all found seated around their dinner table. Eyes open, forks in hand, plates perfectly clean. It was the sheriff, Clyde Henley, who found them. A neighbor had called. "Hit in?" said smoke wasn't coming from the chimney, and the Kellers hadn't been seen in town for over a week. Clyde was sick that day, burning with fever, but he climbed into his truck and drove the 5 miles of dirt road out to their cabin. Anyway, there was something off about the place before he even opened the door. The air was too still. No bird calls, no squirrels in the trees. Even the wind seemed to slow down as if it didn't want to touch that place. The Keller cabin sat hunched between the trees like it was trying to disappear into the forest. Inside, the cold hit him first. The fire had gone out days ago and the air felt more like the inside of a freezer than a house. But it wasn't just the cold. It was the silence. Heavy. Like standing inside a deep cave. And then he saw them. All 5 of them sat at the table. Elmer at the head, Jolene to his right, the kids lined up with napkins tucked neatly in their laps. Every one of them looked like they'd just paused mid-bite, forks raised, mouths slightly open, eyes wide and staring straight ahead. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle. They didn't look scared, just frozen, still. The coroner later said their hearts had stopped at the exact same time. All of them. Down to the second. 6:42 p.m. He couldn't explain it. No poison, no illness, no trauma. Their bodies were perfectly intact. It was like someone, or something, had simply turned them off. People started talking about the Keller curse. It wasn't the first time that family had trouble. Elmer's grandfather had bought the land on the cheap way back in the 1880s from a drifter who was in a hurry to get out of town. Story goes, the land had once belonged to the Cherokee and was never supposed to be sold. Some folks said the Kellers had stolen something sacred, and now the earth was collecting its debt. But not everyone bought that story. Some of the older folks in town, the real old-timers, they said the thing in Possum Hollow wasn't a curse at all. They said it was something older, something that lived in the trees, something that watched. A deputy named Vince Wallace went around back the day after the bodies were found. The snow had fallen heavy that week, and he was looking for tracks. He found them, but they weren't from any animal he knew, and they weren't boot prints either. These were long, thin, toes too spread out, no heel. The stride was wide, unnaturally wide, like whatever made them had legs too long for a human. The tracks circled the cabin 3 times, perfect circles, evenly spaced. Then they stopped at the back window. Just stopped. No prints leading away. No sign of where it went. Vince never spoke about it again. Moved out west a few years later and drank himself to death. But before he left, he told the sheriff something strange. He said it felt like the thing that made those tracks had been watching, waiting, like it had been waiting to be invited in. Over the years, stories trickled in. Campers who heard chewing sounds in the dark, hunters who caught glimpses of a tall, thin figure standing at the edge of the woods. A few even claimed it got closer when they blinked, like it was slipping through time or space whenever they weren't looking. One man said he stared at it for 10 straight minutes and it never moved, not even once. But the second he looked away, he felt warm breath on his neck. They call it the Watcher now. That's just the name folks gave it, because no one knows what else to call something that doesn't move, doesn't speak, and doesn't stop staring. The description never changes. A man, maybe, but too tall, too thin, no mouth, skin stretched pale like wax, and those eyes, solid black, shiny like river stones. Sometimes hikers go missing in Possum Hollow. People figure they got lost or hurt, but every now and then, someone finds their camp. Everything left behind, tent unzipped, campfire out, plates full of food, forks set just so. And once, just once, a park ranger found a table set for 5 in the woods. Not a real table, just a ring of stones with 5 chairs placed around it, and every chair was facing the trees. That ranger quit the next day. The Keller house still stands, though it's half collapsed now. Teenagers sometimes dare each other to go inside. A few swear they've heard footsteps upstairs. Others say they saw shadows at the window, tall, thin shadows with no faces. One girl claimed she sat down at the Kellers' old dinner table for a laugh. She pretended to eat off the empty plate and joked about joining them. She made it home, sure, but she wouldn't speak for weeks. When she finally did, all she said was, "It sat down too." These days, locals leave offerings on the tree line, bread, coins, old toys. No one talks about why. They just say it's better to stay on its good side. And no one sits down to eat in Possum Hollow. So if you ever find yourself in southern Tennessee and you see a weathered sign for the Possum Hollow Trail, turn around. Don't go looking for the Keller house. Don't go chasing ghost stories. And whatever you do, don't stop for a meal. Because some things don't want your soul, they want your silence. They want your seat at the table. And once you sit down, they never let you get up again. There's a stretch of high ridge in southwest Virginia that locals call Devil's Backbone. It's not on many maps anymore. Used to be a few mining trails up there, logging routes too, back in the late 1800s, but the paths have all gone to seed. Most folks keep their distance now, even the locals, especially the locals. The first thing you notice about Devil's Backbone is how quiet it is. Not peaceful quiet, hollow quiet, a kind of dead hush that makes your bones itch. No birdsong, no wind, no rustling leaves, just the sound of your boots and your own breath. And then, if you're unlucky, you start to notice the dolls. They're not hidden. They're nailed right to the trees, like grim little trophies staring down at the trail. Porcelain faces, cracked skin. Some have one eye, some have none. Some wear old dresses that might have been white once, but are now stained gray with rain and rot. A few hikers swear the dolls move between visits, that their heads are turned a little more each time. One guy said the doll he passed had its mouth closed the first time, but when he came back down the trail, it was open like it was about to speak. The weirdest part? Some of them look real. Too real. One hiker, a young woman from Roanoke, found a doll nailed to a pine that looked exactly like her. Same red hoodie, same chipped front tooth, same damn mole under the left eye. She screamed so loud she scared off a whole pack of deer. Didn't stop running till she hit the highway. Said she felt watched the whole time. A month later, she vanished from her apartment. All they found was a small wooden box on her bed. Inside was a doll, red hoodie, chipped tooth, eyes open, staring. Everyone in the region knows the name Ruth Whitlock. You can still find black and white photos of her in dusty county records. A tall, lean woman with sunken eyes and long black hair tied tight in a bun. Always wore a bonnet. Always looked like she was holding in a secret. She lived in a big old house just off the ridge, back when the area was still farmland and woods, and not much else. The Whitlock House, they called it. The story goes that Ruth lost her only child in the winter of 1902. Drowned in the creek behind the house while Ruth was inside sewing. After that, something inside her broke. Folks say she started talking to herself, singing lullabies into empty rooms. She stopped going into town, stopped accepting visitors. Then, kids started disappearing. First, it was a 6-year-old girl from a family of sharecroppers. Then a boy from the church choir. Then another and another. All of them under 10. All gone without a trace. Rumors spread like wildfire. They said Ruth was building a new family, that she believed the woods had taken her daughter and she had to repay the debt. Some said she fed the children to the trees. Others said she kept pieces, stuffed what was left with sawdust and needles and porcelain smiles. In 1908, the townsfolk had enough. A mob marched up the backbone with torches and rifles. When they reached the Whitlock house, they found the front door wide open. Inside was a smell that turned their stomachs. Something between rotting meat and perfume. The parlor was full of dolls, hundreds of them, every wall lined. Some were crudely made, others were realistic, too realistic. One man swore he saw his niece's eyes staring back at him from a doll in a rocking chair. They set the house on fire, let it burn to the ground. But they never found Ruth. Some say she died in the flames. Others say she slipped into the woods and became part of them. The forest up there is old, older than anyone remembers. Too quiet, too still. There's things buried in those trees, things deeper than roots. Years passed, but the dolls never stopped appearing. Hikers started finding them nailed to trees right along the trail. No one admitted to putting them there. Some folks tried to take them home, maybe as a joke, or maybe for eBay. That's where things got bad, real bad. A college kid from Blacksburg took one, thought it was a creepy souvenir, posted pictures online, called it my cursed mountain baby. 2 nights later, his roommate found him in the bathtub with sewing needles in his mouth. Dozens of them, tongue stitched shut, eyelids ripped open and sewn to his brow. There wasn't even that much blood. It was like someone had practiced. Another hiker, a man in his 50s, touched a doll on a dare. Just touched it. He spent the next 3 nights screaming that she was in the walls. They found him in a motel room, curled in the corner with a broken mirror in his hand. He'd carved a smile into his own face. When they asked him why, he whispered, "She doesn't like frowns." Most survivors, if they do survive, say the same thing. They start seeing Ruth. Not full on, never straight ahead, just glimpses. In the mirror, in windows, in the corner of your eye. Always wearing that bonnet, always smiling, and always holding a needle in one hand, thread in the other. Locals have rules now. If you hike the backbone, you don't touch the dolls. You don't speak her name aloud. And you never follow voices into the woods. They say if you ignore her, she might ignore you. But if you take from her, if you steal one of her children, then you belong to her, and you won't know it until it's too late. Until you wake up one morning and you can't speak. Until you look in the mirror and your eyes won't close. Until you feel the thread tugging tight around your mouth, your joints stiff, your limbs locked. And somewhere, out in the woods, another doll appears. Same clothes, same moles, same chipped tooth. Just another child for Ruth's collection. So if you ever hear about Devil's Backbone and you're tempted to see the dolls for yourself, don't. Not even once, because once you see her, she sees you too, and she never stops sewing. There's something about old hotels. You know the type? Grand stone walls, sweeping staircases, the lingering scent of lemon polish and dust in the air. They feel like they remember things. Like every footstep on the carpet gets filed away in some hidden part of the building's brain. Mountain Lake Lodge is one of those places. Tucked deep in the Appalachian hills of Virginia, with mist curling through the pines and lake water so still it's like glass. It looks like something out of a postcard from the 1920s. White shutters, ivy-covered brick, the kind of place where people used to come to escape the heat of the cities and drink too much gin under ceiling fans. A couple of movies were even filmed there. You know, the kind where love wins and nobody dies screaming. But the staff? They don't talk about room 207. Ask them straight out and they'll get cagey. Look away. Pretend they didn't hear. One guy at the front desk, mid-40s with a lazy eye and smoker's laugh, got real quiet when a guest asked him about it. "There ain't no 207, he said. "But there is. Everyone knows it. The room's right there, second floor, end of the West Wing. The number's been painted over a few times like they keep trying to forget it's there." The story, what you can piece together from whispers in old newspapers, goes back to 1927, back when Mountain Lake Lodge had just been renamed and was attracting high society types. Furs, pearls, linen suits, the works. That summer, a bellboy named Henry Bellman started working the night shift. 17 years old, quiet, polite, local kid. Folks said he was a little shy but reliable, the kind who said yes ma'am and carried bags with both hands. Then, one August morning, they found him in the service elevator, hanging by his own necktie, eyes wide open, mouth torn into a horrible O like it had been ripped at the corners. The weird part? He was still in full uniform, hat and all, shoes polished, one hand gripping the brass railing like he'd been trying to hold himself up. The official report said suicide. No note, no history of mental problems, but it was easier. That way, clean, no need for questions, but people did talk. Staff swore he'd been acting strange in the days before. Pale, jumpy, kept looking over his shoulder, said he was seeing things in the hallway and asked for a transfer to days. They denied it, told him he'd be fine. The night before, he died. He brought room service to a guest in 207. No one remembers who the guest was. The ledger for that night? Missing, like someone tore the page out. Some say Henry ran screaming down the hall afterward, white as a sheet, mumbling something about the face in the mirror and how it wasn't human. He tried to quit on the spot, but the night manager told him to calm down, sent him back upstairs. By morning, he was dead. Ever since then, 207 has had issues, strange things. Guests complaining about knocks at their door at exactly 3:07 a.m. every time. Not just once or twice. Every single night they stay there. The knocks are polite, like you'd expect from hotel staff. 3 soft taps. Not rushed, not angry. Just expectant. But when guests open the door, there's nothing there. No footsteps, no shadow walking away. Just empty hallway and silence thick as wool. And here's the twist. If you don't open the door, that's when it gets weird. Luggage goes missing. Not moved, not misplaced. Gone. As if it was never there. One man's briefcase, full of sensitive legal documents, vanished in the span of 10 minutes. He reported it stolen, threatened to sue, but security footage showed nothing, just him entering the room with the bag. No one else. Nothing else. Some guests report seeing their reflections smile when they weren't. One woman claimed she was brushing her hair, and in the mirror her reflection stopped. Just stood there, holding the brush mid-air, and smiled. Slowly. Way too wide. When she looked over her shoulder, the room behind her was empty. But when she looked back at the mirror, the reflection winked. Then there's the footage. A young couple, late 20s, city types. GoPro, mounted on a tripod, trying to film their little rustic getaway. They didn't know about the history. Room 207 was just what Expedia gave them. That night, they left the camera recording. Nothing happened at first. Just the hum of the air conditioner and the couple sleeping. Then at 3:07 a.m., 3 soft knocks. The couple didn't move. Too deep asleep, maybe. But the camera picked it up. Loud and clear. The doorknob turned slowly. Didn't open. Just turned. And the shadows in the corner of the room, they shifted. Like something was standing just outside the frame, watching. At the 43-minute mark, the footage went to static. White fuzz and humming, no sound, just snow. But when they reviewed it the next morning, there was a single frame, a frozen image right before the static. It showed a face pressed against the lens. Pale, sunken eyes. Uniform cap tilted to one side. The skin around the mouth was torn wide in a permanent scream. And the grin, God, the grin, was wet and black, like it had been burned on. The hotel denied everything, said it was a prank, said the camera must have glitched. But the couple left before sunrise, drove 6 hours straight without stopping, never came back. The guy posted the video online. It stayed up for maybe a day before it was taken down. Nobody knows who flagged it. The user's account was deleted, gone like it never existed. But the story didn't stop. Staff say sometimes the service elevator runs at night on its own, that it stops on the 2nd floor and just sits there with the door open, like it's waiting. One housekeeper quit after she stepped inside and felt a hand on her shoulder, even though she was alone. She looked in the mirrored panel and saw a boy standing behind her, hat on, eyes wide, mouth torn, grinning. She never went back. Mountain Lake Lodge still operates, still books weddings and corporate retreats. The lake is still pretty. The food's still decent. But ask the staff about room 207 and watch what happens. Their faces change. Something flickers behind the eyes, like a cold wind just brushed past their spine, because Henry Bellman is still there, still knocking. And if you're ever unlucky enough to hear it, 3 knocks at 3:07 a.m., you have a choice to make. Open the door, or see what happens when you don't. Just don't look too long in the mirror afterward, because your reflection might smile first, and it won't be your face anymore.